want to get right into this from the word go. We know that at the heart of the EFL's agenda right now, they want more TV money to be distributed evenly across the 72 clubs.
They want more money, yeah.
That's fair to say. They want more money. But as they continue to hit a brick wall with the Premier League in that endeavour, it's been revealed in a meeting last month, the EFL discussed the idea of abandoning the 3 p.m. Saturday TV blackout to instead make every single EFL game live to watch on Netflix and Amazon, with a minimal amount on traditional TV. Question number one, I've got two of them. Question number one, would abandoning the 3 p.m. TV blackout surely damage attendances in the lower league?
I'm not sure that it would. I mean, you have to look at the genesis of the 3 p.m. blackout. It was basically brought in. Originally, the 3 p.m. kickoffs were brought in back in the day because the workers finished at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they can make their way to the games and get there for 3 o'clock. That then translated into TV companies not being able to broadcast because it damaged live attendances. But the world has moved on and the dynamics of football have changed. And whilst it sounds like a stating the bleeding obvious, live is live and there's no other experience like live.
True.
Broadcasting and using digital technology to enhance the opportunities, they can't get the revenue streams that they want from the broadcasters that in order to finance football the way they want to. Opening up the door and moving football around and looking at things that are no longer, in my belief, sacrosanct. They're not every aspect. I'm a great one for tradition, and I believe that there's an element of the need for it. I believe in the way that Wimbledon sets itself up as a tennis tournament and so on and so forth in the FA Cup final. But a lot of things have changed. Wimbledon have adapted to not playing. The ban on middle Sundays is now gone. The FA Cup final has moved from being played at 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and on we go. Right? And there was an element of if the EFL would be tardy and unprofessional, which is its stock in trade, if it didn't look at the case for the economics of removing the 3 p.m. blackout and looking at utilising streaming and digital technology to be able to provide alternate revenue streams to the EFL clubs. So I don't think it would damage the game. I don't think it would damage the live attendances. I think it would enhance the opportunity to be able to market themselves more. But of course, they've got to do a risk analysis profile. Now, they're not talking about it now. They're talking about it in 2024, 25, because they can't talk about it now because they've just done a deal with Sky for another few years, and that deal runs out in 24. I think the EFL deal that they got was a 5-year deal till 2024, so the current relationship with Sky will prohibit them from being able to do this now anyway.
In the immediate future?
Well, up until the new deal with Sky evaporates or becomes renegotiated.
But if it comes about, though, and you know your game's on Netflix or Amazon, you're not going to go to your stadium.
Well, I'm not so sure that's right, because I think people still have the relationship with being live and the relationship with watching it through a different mechanism, and I think there should be an availability to do both. And I think if it's marketed properly, positioned properly, and priced properly, then you'll get an opportunity to be able to have the best of both worlds. No one is going to want, and I know that I rail against the EFL, but there's some sensible thinkers in there now. No one's going to want to take off Peter to pay Paul, are they? They're not going to want to say, well, take off the live audience that buys hot dogs and hamburgers inside the stadium, which is secondary spend, so we can get a few extra bob from streaming. It will be an economic basis for the decision-making process, and there is absolutely an argument for people to be able to have both, which is a digital season ticket and a digital methodology to watch your games and the live. And I think live is even more so. Never more have we seen the pull and draw of football, both from the television companies and from the fans going back into stadiums since the COVID crisis and people's reaction to it.
Oh, true.
And if we're going to live with this ridiculous, ever-decreasing circle of COVID, television might become even more important in our ridiculous new world that we live in. So I don't look at it as something that people should be frightened of, or clubs should be sitting there going, we're going to lose our live game over it. I know the Premier League is different, but if you look at the attendances now, no EFL ground is pretty much full every week. The Premier Leagues are, and the Premier League broadcasts most of its games. So with the due respect to them, they don't have a damage. And I think the EFL, given the percentages they've currently got, it'll just open up another marketplace. That's all it'll do.
That's all.
If it's done properly, if it's positioned properly.
And that's key, isn't it?
Well,
that's key.
Well, of course it is.
Do we have the confidence that it would be positioned properly?
Well, that is down to the people.
Because if it's not, then what I'm suggesting will happen.
With the current Football League management structure and with the competency that's in there, and I'm very specific about this, with the intellectual capital that Trevor Birch brings to bear. And I'm not loading the entire salvation of English football outside the Premier League on Trevor Birch's shoulders, but he will have the clear thinking to look at the opportunities, to look at the dynamics of how football needs to evolve outside of the Premier League. Because I make that sort of sweeping joke about how Sky promotes the Premier League with wonderful bells and whistles, and the EFL is promoted by some old geezer swinging a raffle. We need to highlight the benefits of the English Football League in a far better way than we currently do. And if part of that is opening up the marketplace for people to watch it on a VOD basis through people like Netflix and streaming it, then that needs to be part of the discussions. And if it doesn't make commercial sense, and there's a general concern that you're going to lose a percentage of live gates in replacement for digital ones, then they won't do it, will they?
If the EFL do it before the Premier League do it, it puts pressure on the Premier League to do the same, doesn't it? Undoubtedly.
Possibly. I mean, don't forget the Premier League is...
Well, fans will want it.
Well, look, I mean, there's an idea that the fans dictate the pace, and to some extent they do. And there's an idea that, to all intents and purposes, that the fans were entirely responsible for bringing down the European Super League. That is in part true, but not definitively. And if the commercial landscape with the broadcasters, don't forget that the moment the Premier League wants to start distributing its own product without its broadcast partners, it's going to start moving into the territory that I think it should be in anyway, which is broadcasting every single game, building its own model, having its own platform, and taking every revenue rather than giving it to Sky, BT and other broadcasters around the world.
And that's a good point you make, Simon, because fans, I think, by and large, want alternatives. They want to be offered something different. There's Damon Rudd again, who's a good listener to this show. What if the Premier League game could be streamed once tickets are at a 90% capacity sell?
Listen, what they want is price breaks, because the price of watching football is becoming far more expensive in this country than it is anywhere else in the world. You can watch Premier League football all day if you want in Australia for $10 a month, and you can watch the same thing in the UK for 90 quid a month. Yeah. It's unfortunately the supply and demand metrics of how you buy the content. But yes, of course. But you can't legislate for how football clubs stock their stadiums with fans. You can only look at the commercial deals that you do with the broadcasters that you currently have. Your bed partners are your paymasters are Sky, BT and the overseas rights. You can't subsequently say, well, I'll have all of that, but actually I'm going to take away some of the exclusivity you guys have got by doing my own thing and stream my own games, and then expect those other guys to say, oh, we're just grateful for getting the crumbs off the table. It won't work that way. So I don't think what the EFL does will necessarily leverage the Premier League, but it might poke them into a particular conundrum they might not want to be in right now.
I must admit, you do see Trevor Birch as something of the saviour of the game.
Well, having said, the EFL. I don't see him as a saviour of the game. I see him as critical thinking. And the reason why I see him as critical thinking is because I've sat in these buffoonery-based meetings of Football League where it is, and look at what Christian Purslow said. The one thing he said was, you walked in and Brentford chief executive said, my God, is this professional? It's not professional in the Premier League. It's just filled with avarice, and money concentrates everybody's mind. It's one single agenda. In the Football League, I cannot tell you how banal it is. I cannot tell you how puerile it is. When you've got absolute Armageddon, they're talking about absolute mundane, redundant things. When there's no finances in football outside of the Premier League, I can remember the whole football pyramid being in jeopardy when the ITV digital deal collapsed, and the suggestion from the EFL was for the football club chairman to take a placard and march on the House of Lords. I mean, I've never heard such claptrap in all my life.
Wow, I can see you doing that.
The only three chairmen that didn't do it from the Championship were myself, Theo Paphitis and Charles Coppell from Wimbledon, because we just thought it was absolutely embarrassingly ridiculous and low rent. If you'd have done your deal in the first place, which was sign a guarantee with ITV Digital that had parent company guarantees, you wouldn't get people marching around like some ridiculous buffoons on the House of Lords while everyone's laughing at you.
Have you ever attended an event with a placard in your hand?
No, I haven't, and I wasn't about to do it as a multi-millionaire football club chairman pleading with idiot politicians to help us with something that we should have done ourselves.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning 10 till 1 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.